Welcome to our online video series, Reading Hope in Trying Times. Our guest today is Mike Burkhard. Mike is an independent author and speaker living in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. In January 2020, he published his first book, Defeating the Toxic New Normal, Finding Our Path Back to Empathy and Understanding. The book is a commentary on the increasingly complicated challenge of the human journey, given the rapid social and technological changes of our time. Mike's early career was in product management, but he moved into human resources for the second half of his career. He most recently left the role of HR vice president for a global technology company to follow his dream to write and mentor others. So Mike and I have known each other for about 30 years because we both worked together as product managers at AT&T Consumer Products in the early 1990s. So it's really particularly wonderful to have Mike with us here today. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Brian. Thank you very much for having me. In 30 years, it doesn't seem that long, but yes, and those were some great times together.
We were very fortunate to have worked with some amazing folks and amazing role models for us when we were relatively early in our own careers at that point.
Yeah, we really were. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about today, the journey we all take, and that was a very important time in my life. I learned a lot during that period from many people.
So one thing I have to ask is, how is it that you look so much younger than I do when we're both about the same age?
Well, my wife's not far away, so I'll say, my wife's a very health-conscious person. So I'll say she takes very good care of me, and we eat really well. We walk every day, so I think that has a lot to do with it.
Well, good for her. Good for you. So maybe we can start by just having you chat a little bit about how this coronavirus pandemic that we're going through has affected you and your thoughts and reflections on it so far.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult time for the world in many ways, and we see that in the news all the time. But as you're also starting to see, there's a silver lining, which maybe 2-3 weeks ago was hard to say. How could there be any silver lining? But there is a silver lining within it all, and I think it's a hopeful time as well, because people are seeing that maybe we do need to spend more time with our families. Maybe we need to slow down a little bit and understand about the health of ourselves as individuals, the health of our families, the health of our societies. And the book that I wrote, Defeating the Toxic New Normal, Finding Our Path Back to Empathy and Understanding, well, I'll say it was pre-pandemic. In a way, it might have been a bit prophetic, because the whole point of the book was we're on a very fast pace now. That is the toxic new normal. This was back in January. And how do we get beyond that? How do we find empathy and understanding again? It didn't have to take a pandemic, but the pandemic is here. And the silver lining, we're finding a way back to empathy and understanding. As hard as it is to go through, we are finding a way back to empathy and understanding.
So one of the things that we're discussing during these interviews is how God's helped us through challenging times in the past. And so you want to share a little bit about that from your personal perspective?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. The book that I mentioned, Defeating the Toxic New Normal, the premise is that we all walk this path in life, and there are major portions of it that we all share. And my goal was to build awareness that we do all go through those different steps, and to build empathy and understanding that way through awareness. One of the major steps there, I call it the God experience, and I named it the God experience, one of our major paths in life, purposely, calling it the experience. I'll describe that through my own experience, and that is, actually before that, I want to mention, I think the God experience for all of us, it's certainly different, and I also think it changes along the journey that we each take. And for me, looking back, I was born into a Catholic family in a small town. We had a beautiful, lovely, ornate Catholic church for community of 2,000 people or so. And I went to Catholic school as a young boy. And oh my goodness, I would go into the church before school. We'd have mass, and I'd look up at the murals or hear the organ music. I couldn't look too much because the nuns might come and tell me to pay attention, but it started to make a big impact in my own life on what God was. And as a Catholic, God was very much separate in a way. I didn't understand it at that time fully, like I'll share, I think, how I think now. But and then, you know, that early experience, I do think, instilled in me different values, you know, to appreciate other people, love other people, accept other people. I wasn't perfect by any means, but it was the start. The seeds were planted. And then I think, like everyone, we have experiences in life that start to shape us and shape how we think of God. This is the God experience. For me, I'll share two that were very impactful. One, as a young father, or not father, husband, I should say, my son was born, Brian, and when Brian was born and came into the world, it was such a miracle to me. My whole world opened up, and I thought, wow, there are miracles. God came closer to me that day because I just felt such love and understanding, and it was a beautiful experience. And then it's not always a happy experience necessarily that I think brings us closer to God, even as we're seeing today in the pandemic. In my case, my mother got cancer when I was about 30 years old, and it started to change my life. I didn't know it so much at the time, but watching her go through that, I became more aware of total health, being more conscious about what I ate, how I took care of myself, what caused disease, what caused positive thinking or negative thinking. And that whole experience with my mom changed my life. And again, it drew me closer to God, and it was part of my God experience. I write about these in the book because while those are my experiences, I think other people, we all have this roller coaster ride where we have experiences, and, you know, hopefully it brings you closer to God or the God experience. And then bringing it full circle to today, you know, as bad as the pandemic is, you know, to me, the God experience is appreciating other people, loving other people, being more content in the present moment of the things that we have in our life versus maybe being on full speed so much you take things for granted. And it's so loving in a way to see now that people praising first responders, the medical community, the police, the people that are on the front lines. I mean, to me, that's the God experience. It's like seeing other people, the people in the grocery stores that are serving us. It's like you now see those people, and there's a certain love bursting through. And, you know, so for me, I see the God experience now in our world, and it's slowing us down. It is the silver lining. And, you know, for me personally, God has gone from this young boy with the Catholic experience of God being over there or outside of me, and now there's such more love that's built through me through these experiences that, you know, God and love are more interchangeable to me, and that's my God experience. It's not everybody's God experience. Everyone has their own, but I wanted to share mine, and that's the premise of the book that I wrote, finding our path back to empathy and understanding. It didn't have to be a pandemic. There's other things that I've noted in the book that can bring awareness, but sometimes it does bring a catastrophe. I would mention 9/11. That was probably the last big one in the U.S. Again, we all came together. We were all one people. There wasn't all this division that we see. So sometimes it does take a very negative event, but in the end, I think we all move forward both individually and societally closer to God and closer to a God experience.
So on the flip side of really challenging times are the times that, you know, go pretty well, right? And so, you know, I mentioned in the introduction that you and I worked together in AT&T Consumer Products in the early 1990s, which was a very positive environment and a very positive experience. You want to talk a little bit about why you think that was the case?
Absolutely. Well, that's profound, Brian. That's a great question. I hadn't thought of it that way, but in the book, Defeating the Toxic New Normal, I take us on a journey, the human journey. And ultimately, the human journey is, I call it the path of awareness. It's like, it may sound simple at times, but it opens us up to our thinking, our conscious thoughts versus our subconscious thoughts. And, for example, step one on our journey, all of us at very young ages, we become programmed in a certain way through our beliefs, our cultures, our parents, people around us. We move to the gift of love. We start forming loving relationships or not. Sometimes it's not an easy thing. Moving along, we come to the power of choice and being responsible, searching for meaning, and then the God experience. My point is, through all of these steps, we're opening our awareness to how we think, what limits us, what might move us forward. And so this is the path of awareness. On the path of awareness is a lot of goodness, a lot of love, a lot of understanding, a lot of empathy. When I look at Project Miracles, it was a major moment in my life. I think it was 1983, maybe 84. You and I were a little bit younger then, but I remember going there and it was all about awareness. I thought I knew who I was. I thought I knew a lot of things. And then all of a sudden, watching other people go through certain experiences and myself, it was like, oh my goodness, my thinking started to shift. I looked at other people differently. They made us climb. It was an outdoor experience. I climbed a tree. It seemed like it was 100 feet high, but maybe it was 40. I don't know. I had to jump off on a zip line, and I stood over the Texas horizon, and I said, in my head, they said to me, Mike, remember this moment. And I said in my head, if I can do this, I can do anything. And I jumped off that zip line because I'm so afraid of heights. Went across that ravine, and it changed my life. I was like, oh my God, I can do anything. And my awareness shifted, changed my life. I would say too, that's part of my God experience. It helped me be a better person. And that's also what I meant by God experience. So that's what I meant by profound as well, Brian. That's how it impacted me. It was big.
Well, I know myself reflecting on those times, I've been in plenty of other business environments where things were not nearly as good, from a cultural perspective, from a relationship perspective, or from just a sheer business perspective. And so even though that, the time that we were together there at AT&T was still a business, it was more than a business. The relationships that we formed then were pretty tight bonds and pretty positive bonds and a pretty positive influence, I know, at least on me, through the rest of my career, the rest of my life. And so, so it's just, how did that happen? I guess, we commented on how, we had the president of our division, Ken Berticini, was an incredibly positive influence in all of that. But I still wish, there was a formula we could use, you know what I mean, in any kind of environment that we're in to create the kind of environment that we had been a part of then.
Wow, that's you're bringing back great memories, Brian. I mean, the word that comes to me is vulnerability. A lot of words, you've used them so long or heard them so long, they kind of lose meaning sometimes. But if you stop and pause and think about certain words like vulnerability, what do I mean by that? Well, when all of us went through Project Miracles, you saw people in a whole different light. It wasn't at a conference table or on a phone call. It wasn't in a meeting room. It wasn't at work, where people often will build a facade, not the real self. They're not vulnerable at work. When we went through Project Miracles, we saw the human side of people. There were stories shared, and we saw people climb things or do things that we never thought ourselves we could do. And you saw people being vulnerable. When you bring that back into the workplace, which I think we did, you saw the vulnerability at work. And then there's the people that I just described. But then when the leaders too are vulnerable and they share from the heart, and they share, what's going on in the business, both the good and sometimes not so good. But you end up with a great respect for people that lead you when they're vulnerable and they're real. And it's not always easy. I'm not making it sound, I don't want it to sound like it's always simple. This is the point of growing our awareness. But vulnerability shows the human side of all people, and I think it brings people together. I think we're seeing vulnerability today in the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, Mike. I mean, it's clear that, vulnerability did play a role in tightening those bonds, that we were experiencing at that point in time.
Yeah. I'll never forget Jerry Baxter and Tim Baxter, a father and son duo. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes that day watching them share and actually say things they had never been able to say to each other. And it was all profound because it was all based in love. So something happened in that time which opened up that vulnerability for those two to share. And I just use that as one example. I think most of us, all of us had our own experiences there. And that's what I mean by the God experience. That's probably in my top 5 or top 6 in terms of changing my life.
So what kind of resources can you suggest for people to take advantage of now as we're all going through different aspects of this pandemic? It's just kind of amazing to me how different people are experiencing this given their life circumstances. Some people are kind of overwhelmed. I mean, if you're certainly a healthcare worker, if you're trying to take care of children at the same time that you're working, there are many of pastors, churches, just all kinds of different roles where, it's just consuming and overwhelming right now. And in other cases, life has stopped or come to a crawl for folks that, depending on, their normal routine. So what are some different things that you can recommend that you found to be helpful for us now?
Yes. Well, I'm going to start at a general level. And, I think there's going to be a time here where people are there comes a time in everyone's career or life, I think, when you ask, am I doing what I really want to do in life? And then there are things that happen. You might get laid off, or, you may have someone in your family that, that passed on from an illness or something, and it shifts your thinking, and you think, I want to do something different in my life. And, I think there are different people who now, they're called life coaches. I don't like the term so much because I think in the end, we all have to manage our own lives, if you will, but you do need input from people. And so under the heading of life coaches, the ones I know, there's a process. And because sometimes trying to do it on our own, I'm a process guy. It's like, what are the 3 or 5 steps to get me from here to there? So if you're looking to, maybe you don't have the job now that you had, you're looking to step forward and do something new and different, finding a life coach who can take you through a 3 to 5 step process to identify, what is it you really want to do, and how do you step forward to do that? I think that's extremely valuable. As a side note, and I'm not looking to create business, but my wife and I are going to be creating that here in the next 2 months. We want to help people. We think this is such an important time to help people understand what I just described. But there are other people out there, and you get a sense of their website and what they do. But I would look for someone that's has a process. So that's the important thing. I think secondly, and I mentioned in the book, quiet time. And, quiet time, it's, people hear meditation and they think they got to go in a room and cross their legs and things like that. It doesn't have to be that. It's, spending time in nature. We're seeing that now. People are outside, just spending a quiet moment before turning the TV on or your smartphone, or meditation. Karen and I are meditating more. We spend a half hour with soft music just to start looking internal. Again, what are the things that you want to create in your life? I think often people look externally, like if I if I get this, I'll be able to do that. I think most of the answers are inside. So those are the general things I think about, Brian, for your question.
Well, Mike, I know, you've got the new book that just came out, and I know I'm excited to read it. But can you share just a little bit from that, something that may be particularly pertinent for our times today?
Yes, Brian, I'd like to share three things. It was going to be one thing, and I just thought of two others.
Three is fine.
I want to share my story again, which is the heart of my book, and that is, when you first asked me to do this, I thought, oh my goodness, I just wrote one book. And in the book, I also note that, for whatever reason, I have this fear in me sometimes, like, oh my goodness, I'm not an author. I didn't write a good book. And, things like that come into all of our heads.
The imposter syndrome.
What is it?
The imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Is what a lot of authors refer to that as.
Yes, I call it my fake self, false self versus my real self. And so a day goes by and I'm like, Mike, let's do this. And so I'm doing it. The other thing, though, in the meantime, I've been listening to the other authors that you've had on, and oh my goodness, they're so decorated. They've written so many books and done so many things. And then I start comparing myself to them. And I'm like, part of my point in the book, too, that I write, it's like, when you start comparing yourself to others, you don't get anywhere. That's the whole point of one of the big points of life that I've learned. And by the way, I have to keep coming back to it because I'm like, Mike, you're your own author. Don't compare yourself to people that are on bestseller lists and all that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe later when my book is the bestseller. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because for me, that's part of the empathy and understanding, knowing that we all have those negative thoughts, and this is awareness. Like for me, if they come right here, it's like get by them and move through them. So being here is part of that, and I'm so happy I'm here. So that's the first thing. I wanted to just complete too on the God experience for me. And there's a quote here from Goethe, Goethe. He's a philosopher of old, and I found this profound. I put it in the book as one quote, and here it is, and then I'll wrap up with one reading from the book. But Goethe said, "So waiting, I have won from you the end, God's presence in each element." So waiting, I have won from you the end, God's presence in each element. So when I speak of awareness, when I speak of the God experience, for me personally, and it's not perfect, it's not every day, it's not every moment, but when I look around me, when I see people, when I see things in nature, my dog Max, I mean, there's such beauty in everything. And to me, that is the God experience, seeing God's presence in each element. And then last, I just wanted to wrap up with a brief paragraph, maybe two paragraphs from the book. I find it, I'll put it this way. I didn't mean to be prophetic. I was just writing a book about how do we return to empathy and understanding. The last sentence or two here is a bit prophetic, and I'll get to that in a moment. But let me read this to you. And the heart of this reading is all about love. It's the last chapter, and the last chapter is entitled "Love is Our Antidote." For all of us, life, like a book, has an opening chapter, a story to tell, a climax, and then an ending. The travels we take along the path of awareness can help brighten the story and bring out the goodness in ourselves and the world if we choose. Simplicity, empathy, forgiveness, acceptance, and most importantly, love are all to be found on the path. It seems trite to end with "love is the answer," but that is the simple truth of life, and it comes fully alive through our experiences on the path of awareness that we are each blessed to travel. Love is always there, but love is not always found. It is beyond a word. It is a feeling that lives in the core of our being. It is a feeling that we have accepted ourselves for who we are. It is a feeling of gratitude that our family is the greatest gift that we could ever have. It is a feeling of responsibility that we only want to share the most encouraging of emotions with the world. When each of us feels acceptance, gratitude, and responsibility, then confusion clears, hatred ends, and killing stops. The path of awareness is complete, and love reclaims its place as the new normal. In truth, it always has been and always will be. May your story always be filled with love. May love restore empathy and understanding around the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that with us, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And I hear more and more about, the new normal or returning to normal. And when I read that, it brings a different context to it. It's like, well, what is the normal? And the whole essence there is that love, as trite as it sounds, it is the normal. It should be the normal. Sometimes it takes a pandemic to find love. It doesn't have to. I think the world will be better off from what we're going through currently. As hard as it is to say, I know people are dying. God bless the families that are going through difficult times, but the world can be a better place. But we all have a responsibility in that individually.
Well, I just, want to come back to what we touched on a moment ago. You were like a little bit concerned about comparing yourself, you know what I mean, with other authors and competing against an author. But, at the end of the day, we're competing against darkness.
Yes.
Right? That's that's the end thing, is how do we help people get through the darkness, whatever that darkness is. And the fact that you're, doing this in your second career, and your new book is, I think, making consumer products proud. So, so thank you for doing that, Mike.
Well, that's so nice of you, and thank you for that reminder. I mean, I'm human. We're all human. Believe me, I don't remember all the things in my book every day, but one of the things I do notice what you said, Brian. I want to be a better Mike every day. That's what I can control. I don't want to be a better author than that person. I want to be a better Mike every day. I know that sounds kind of, well, you said it so well, and it's a reminder to me. I do want to be better every day, and that's thank you for sharing that.
Well, thanks so much for agreeing to do the interview. It was so good to catch up with you. So good to see what you're doing now.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best in your calling. That you and your wife are building your new business, but it's really your new calling. So I'm so glad to see that, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's so wonderful to see you.